I think Rebecca didn't mention I'm with the Southeast Iowa Sierra Club, and our mission is to explore, enjoy, and protect the natural environment. So this is a subject that matters a lot to us. And by the way, in the back we have some representatives of the Sierra Club, and they'll be happy to take donations, or if you want to sign up for an ad hoc committee to do more research and figure out ways that we can improve our recycling or our trash management in Fairfield, that's where you want to go. So who's here to just find out what you can recycle and what you can't recycle and where to do it? Anybody? Okay, and is there anybody here who wants to know how recycling fits into the larger economy? Okay, and how about anybody want to know what other solutions there might be, how we can solve this problem? Okay, well, we got something for everyone here. So for starters, there are three things I want to make sure that you know about before the end of tonight. And when I'm done with my slides, we should have plenty of time for some discussion and questions and answers. Although I don't have a lot of answers. Some of you may have more answers than I do, and that's one of the reasons we're starting this committee, because we don't have a lot of answers. So the three concepts that I'm going to want to make sure you know, one is the linear economy, the second is a circular economy, and the third is a redesigned economy. So what's recycling? It's recovering waste and reprocessing it into useful materials or items. And it's important because when we recycle, we reduce the need for more extractive activities like mining or lumbering or quarrying. And we also reduce the need for refining raw materials. And all of those activities, the extractive activities and the processing of raw materials, increase our carbon footprint. They put greenhouse gases into the air, and so that contributes to climate change. So recycling is an important part of reducing the problems around climate change. So garbage is kind of a human thing. In nature, there really isn't any garbage. In nature, outputs from one system become inputs for another system. So when the leaves fall off the trees, they go into the forest floor and they mulch up and they make richer soil, and then new trees grow out of that. So it's just a cycle that goes on, and there's nothing lost, and it just goes on indefinitely. The picture on the right is a picture of a farm, and a lot of times on farms in the past and in regenerative agriculture, all the outputs were used as inputs for the next thing. They would mulch things and compost and all that sort of thing. So there wasn't a lot of waste. Cities, on the other hand, have had issues with garbage since the beginning of cities. Another example of this idea of no waste in nature, squirrels run around and they poop all over the forest, and their poop enriches the soil, and then more trees grow and we get more squirrels living in the trees. Let's talk a little bit about how we have traditionally handled our garbage. It's as if we've been living inside of a big fence. And whenever we had things we didn't want or didn't need anymore, we pretty much just threw them away over the fence. And we didn't think about it after that. Out of sight, out of mind. But let me explain what over the fence means. Over the fence means it went to a dump or to a landfill, or somebody burned it, or it got sent offshore to another country. But it didn't go away in the sense that it wasn't a problem anymore. It just got moved to a different place to be a problem someplace else. Landfills, by the way, and Semco is the landfill where our garbage ends up when Waste Management carries it away. It goes to Semco landfill. And a landfill, by the way, is not the same as a dump. A landfill has to be sited with careful attention to geology and geography and the nearness of population centers and water. All of that has to be thought about. And when things go into a landfill, that's not the same as composting. Landfills are anaerobic, and things don't decompose very well there because they're packed tight and there's no air and there's no anything in there. So that's a whole nother conversation, but I just wanted to make that clear. And in Fairfield, what we have is curbside recycling. We put our garbage in the garbage can and we put our recycling in the curbside recycling bin. In Fairfield, that's what we have, residential curbside recycling. We don't have business recycling, and we don't have any citywide composting. As far as recycling goes, it's a lovely picture, isn't it? You'll notice there's not very many, actually any people in that picture. A lot of what happens in the recycling industry is automated. There's not a lot of people looking through things. It's a lot of optical scanners and such. In any case, a lot of you are probably old enough to remember how we started recycling back in the day. You used to you had a bin for the glass, and you had a bin for the paper, and you had a bin for plastic, and you had a bin for metal. And everything had to be kept separate, and if you didn't do it right, they didn't pick it up and take it away. You had to deal with it yourself. And that worked pretty well. That's not single stream recycling. That's a different kind of a deal. And we had an industry that was beginning to develop and was building its capacity for sorting and cleaning and recycling our waste. So around 1992, many American cities and trash companies started to offshore their most contaminated and least valuable recyclables to China and other third world countries that were desperate for raw materials. It turns out that that was cheaper and easier than investing in developing technology and labor to manage our own trash. So the problem was that in those third world countries and in China, the dirty bales of waste were usually processed under really lax environmental controls. Most of it just got dumped, and a lot of it just flowed down the rivers and eventually contributed to ocean pollution. And today it's the same thing. Most third world countries do not have very good environmental controls at all. As this offshoring began, eventually China became the world's largest importer of recycled paper and plastics, and they became our primary buyer. But starting in about 2013 and moving up till 2017 and 18, the Chinese started to clamp down on the amount of garbage that they would import and how picky they were about what they would import. And by 2018, they weren't taking anything from us anymore. And the reasons that they gave for that is because there was poor quality of materials received, because there was pollution caused by poor recycling practices, because they wanted to protect human health and safety, and because China felt that it was time for it to develop its own domestic recovery system for recyclable material. They were coming up not a third world country so much anymore. They had a burgeoning middle class, and they needed to start dealing with this stuff. So while that's good news for China, it wasn't such great news for us, for our waste management systems anyway, unless you recognize that this crisis is kind of an opportunity for us. Because it's time for us to start figuring this stuff out for ourselves. The Chinese ban on recycling disrupted recycling worldwide, and it caused our domestic recyclers to have to scramble to maintain some kind of economics in the recycling industry. For example, prices for recyclables dropped precipitously, often far below the cost of gathering and shipping the material. For example, bales of mixed paper that used to sell for $155 a ton were now barely reaching $10 a ton. And that's a pretty big shift. And with this change, with China not taking anything anymore, we couldn't anymore dump our junk over the wall, which went to China or anyplace else. So before 1990s, we were beginning to build a robust recycling culture and economy. But when offshoring happened, we kind of fell behind, and we didn't have, when China said they weren't taking it anymore, everybody's like, oh, what do we do now? We don't have sorting facilities, we don't have waste to energy facilities, we don't have this, we don't have that. And in case you're wondering where the United States is in terms of this is a bunch of developed countries. The arrow shows where the United States is. We're not doing so hot. And somebody just told me that Sweden, is it, Michael? Sweden is doing really well in their recycling, so much so that they're almost out of trash. So now we're in the situation of whatever garbage or trash we create, it has to stay inside our own fence. And you can imagine if that was your yard, you would have to start changing how you were living, otherwise you'd have a pretty terrible looking yard. If you doubt that there's a garbage crisis, I want to invite you to learn about the garbage gyres in the ocean. There's now 6 of them. 6 different places, and the gyres are places where currents end up crossing each other and coming together in such a way, and it has to do with the spinning of the earth and the winds and all sorts of things like that. But the bottom line is that these are places where things just kind of swirl around and get dumped. And the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, the biggest one, is a big collection of floating trash. It's 79,000 metric tons of plastic in that Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Most of it is abandoned fishing gear and a lot of microplastics. And it's said to be larger than the state of Texas. This is not the Pacific Garbage Patch. This is a guy in a kayak, I guess, or a canoe, probably near shore someplace. A lot of the stuff that comes down the rivers ends up near a beach or near shore, and it's just another example of something that's not so great. So looking a little bit closer to home, you might be wondering where the trash goes in Fairfield. It doesn't go to the county supervisors or to the courthouse. That was just to let you know we're talking local now. So Fairfield's municipal solid waste is collected by Waste Management, we mentioned that before, and it goes to the Semco landfill, and the recycling that they collect is compressed and shipped to Springfield, Illinois, where it gets sorted. Probably most of us agree that recycling is a good idea conceptually, but even when we recycle, we still generate a lot of waste, more than we can really handle. So we know we have a problem with garbage, and we know we have a problem with recycling. And with single stream recycling programs, such as we have in Fairfield, which is certainly better than not having any recycling, a lot of times from up to 30 to 80% of what you've put into the recycling bin ends up in the landfill, even despite our best intentions. Yes, this is from Chris Betton at Waste Management.
Could you repeat the percentage?
I can. 30 to 80% of what we try to recycle in the recycling bin ends up in the landfill. And the reason for that is contamination. Contamination is a really big problem in recycling, and especially in single stream recycling. I'm going to talk a little bit in a minute about the linear economy that I said I was going to talk about, but let me just talk a little bit about contamination first. So contamination occurs either through carelessness or lack of education. People don't know what can be recycled and what can't. And it means that materials unacceptable for recycling are mixed in with materials that are acceptable for recycling. And as I showed you, there aren't a lot of people involved in the sorting of this stuff. So you're thinking, well, I'll put this in there, and if it's not right, somebody will take it out. Well, it might not be anybody. And so when the optical scanners or the machines can't cope with whatever is there, they're going to just shove it off and it'll go to landfill. And even though it might have been, and another example is if you try to recycle, say, a window cleaning bottle, a plastic window cleaner bottle. The plastic bottle is probably number 2 or number 5, whatever it is, and that's recyclable. And the nozzle might be a different type of plastic, and it might have metal in it, and it isn't recyclable. And so you want to take it apart, because if you leave it together, it's possible that the optical scanner or whatever machine might not be able to manage it, and it'll get discarded and rejected, and that's not what you intended. And the other thing is that we don't put things like garden hoses or plastic drinking straws in, because those can really gum up those belts that you saw in the other slide. And so contamination is a really serious problem. And also, if you have a nice clean bin filled with paper and plastic and glass, and somebody dumps a takeout food container into it, that's going to contaminate the whole thing. The paper is the most recyclable, and if it gets food on it, it's not going to get a good price. It's not going to be sellable at all, and so the whole thing might get discarded, and that's not what you want, not what we want. Okay, here's a pop quiz. Pizza boxes are cardboard. Can they be recycled?
No.
Right, why not?
Grease.
That's right. You might be able to recycle the top, but not the bottom if there's grease on it. If you didn't pick them up when you came in, there are some miniature versions of these 2 handouts by the back door, and I would encourage everybody to take one when you go. The one on the left tells you what the most common contaminants are, so you know these are things that you can't recycle, and the one on the right tells you all the different recycling options at Waste Management and Connelly. And I think on the back of one of them is something about top 10 things you can do. And anyway, so yes, that was a point I was going to make, is that, yeah, you really have to wash things out if you're going to recycle. And we don't want to do wishful recycling, which means putting things in the bin that we think it probably should be recyclable, right? It's organic. It's a hemp, made out of hemp. It's a jacket. I should put it in there. No, fibers don't get recycled in curbside recycling, so please don't put that in there. For the most part, up until now, we've been operating on what I call a linear economy. That means that manufacturers and producers have been following a model of take, make, and dispose. And that type of manufacturing means that instead of recycling the raw materials and any waste associated with the production process, they just throw them away. And that means they incinerate it, or they dump it, or they bury it, and we know there are problems with all of those. And also, our culture and we've often deliberately promoted even more production. We've all heard of planned obsolescence. Probably you didn't know, I certainly didn't know, that in 1932, a man named Bernard London wrote a scholarly paper called Ending the Depression Through Planned Obsolescence. His proposal was that if we designed manufactured items to deteriorate more quickly, we would have to produce more, and that would mean more jobs, and that would end unemployment and restart the economy. Well, that kind of happened, but it was a short-sighted idea. Another contributor to the linear economy of take, make, and dispose is the concept that, of corporate mandates. In 1970, Time magazine published an article in which Milton Friedman, the economist, argued that a business's sole purpose is to generate profits for shareholders. And with this view, he felt that a corporation that was acting responsibly was risking less profits or foregoing revenue in the name of social good. And from his point of view, the most socially responsible thing that a corporation could do was to maximize profits. And maybe he thought that there would be a trickle-down effect from a robust economy. And at the time, that idea was pretty much accepted, and that's shareholder primacy has kind of been a thing and has driven many corporations ever since. So at this point, I want to stop and point out that under the linear economy, most of us in developed countries have enjoyed a very comfortable, very convenient lifestyle. Nobody did it to us, put us on a linear economy. We've done it ourselves. We've been tossing our trash over the fence for a long time. We've allowed it as shareholders, we've allowed it as consumers, and we've fully participated in it. And we're going to have to fully participate in unwinding the problem that we have now. We're not going to be able to outsource the solution to another country, and we're not going to be able to, I would suggest that we should not wait for our government to fix it. Okay, so we know that the linear economy is wasteful, and that it produces lots of unwanted and sometimes dangerous landfill waste, and that depletes raw materials and resources. Another thing about the linear economy that we may not think of is that a lot of the statistics that flow out of it are kind of skewed statistics because they never consider what's the cost to the community, what's the cost to the environment, what's the cost in health. They don't think about those things. And so when they're measuring GDP or they're measuring the return on investment of a production line, they're not measuring true cost. So the question is there a better way? And I think there is. We have a recycling economy and a linear economy, but the circular economy is more comprehensive. And the point of a circular economy is that it's regenerative and it's aimed at minimizing waste and maximizing resources. So this kind of economic model uses a repair, reuse, recycle model, and that's in contrast to the take, make, dispose one that we talked about before. Also, we now know that in nature there's no garbage, and one system's outputs are inputs for the other systems, and if we could be more like that in our production, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, we might have better outcomes. So in the circular economy, we can get a whole new paradigm of redesign, renew, and regenerate. But in order for that to happen, we have to design the waste out of our systems. And that's where our opportunity lies. It's a pretty big shift, but it's a pretty big opportunity. And fortunately, I found that there are promising signs that some people are starting to move in this direction of a circular and more abundant economic paradigm. I don't know if you've heard of the Business Roundtable. It's an association of chief executive officers of America's leading companies, and they're all in the list. It's Amazon and Apple and GM and Alliant and American Airlines and Coca-Cola and Dell and all of those companies. I didn't get very far in the alphabet, but it's a really long list. And since 1978, they have periodically, issued what they call principles of corporate governance. And each time since 1997, they have endorsed shareholder primacy in agreement with Milton Friedman's thinking. But in August of 2019, the Business Roundtable changed its tune and they issued a new statement on the purpose of a corporation. And that, I think, is pretty dramatic turnaround for a corporate statement. Concern for customers, employees, suppliers, communities, and the environment didn't used to be a part of most corporate conversations. In fact, according to Milton Friedman, it shouldn't be part of a corporate conversation. Now, some of it might be rhetoric, but it does appear that some corporations are trying to do innovative things that are much more in line with the idea of a circular economy. The most sustainable manufacturing and most sustainable paradigm would be to avoid the creation of garbage altogether. That's the top of the diagram there. By not buying things at all, or by buying used things, buying durable things, or buying consciously. I think on the door there's a thing, somebody expressed it as the 5 R's: refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. We aren't going to talk much about rotting. That's composting, and that's another How To Tuesday topic. But anyway, that's an important part of our trash problem. So the top rung of sustainability is avoiding creating garbage altogether. And obviously, we want to practice that as much as we can. We want to practice those things of refusing things and buying used and all of that. And actually, there are cultures and families and whole countries that traditionally acquire goods more slowly and more carefully than we do and keep them for a long time and pass them down for generations. But a growing concept that we're having now is this idea of products of service. And it kind of goes along with the sharing economy that's big now. The sharing economy is things like zip cars. I don't know if you've heard of those. Zip cars are, your local gas station might have a zip car and people can rent that car. They sign up and reserve the car. And so that means that that car services a whole bunch of people. It's a little different than a rental car in that it's locally sourced and you don't have to take the bus downtown to get the rental car and so on and so forth. Another example, if you've been to Los Angeles and some other major cities, they have these scooters. I think they're called Wings. And you come up to the scooters lying on the side of the road and you come up to it and you scan it with your cell phone if you have the right app. And it unlocks the scooter and you can ride the scooter to wherever you're going and then shut it off and you leave it wherever it is and the next person comes along and uses it. Now they're a big problem in Los Angeles, but the idea is a good one of this whole sharing economy. And this other concept of products of service is the idea that instead of everybody buying their own washing machine, maybe we all lease washing machines. And if the company that's leasing us our washing machine is responsible for its repair and its maintenance, and when we're done with it and we move to a new apartment or a new home, they have to take it back, they're going to manufacture them very differently. They're going to buy the most high-end, well-made piece of equipment that they can. And this can be done with carpeting, with furniture, all that kind of stuff, and that's called products of service. So if we can't avoid creating garbage, then we want to make sure that we manage the garbage that we've created. We want to reuse it as much as we can. When we can't reuse, let's say clothing, when it's just not working as clothing anymore, we want to find a way to repurpose it, use that fabric again for something else, or recycle it into something else altogether. And locally, we have consignment shops that help us do that. We have Bargain Box and Lucky Day and Fairfield Recycling and Habitat Restore and all of those places, which are great places to give things a longer chance to be useful before they go to the landfill. And repair would be a great idea. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time finding somebody to repair things. I hope that we'll have a resurgence of a repair economy one of these days. But right now, it seems that we don't have anybody that repairs shoes or suitcases or things like that, and we don't want them to go to the landfill. So, some companies that are doing this kind of stuff. Maybe you've seen advertisements for Rothy's on the internet. They make these great machine washable shoes, and they make them out of recycled materials, and they're really cool looking shoes. And then ThreadUp takes gently used clothes, refurbishes them, and resells them. And the last slide is a picture of, or the last panel is a picture of repurposed material. It was originally men's suits, and they've been made into waiting room of furniture, and it's upholstered from the men's suits. I personally find it hideous. but you get the idea. So a couple more companies that are in this space that are innovators and leaders in recycling, Carbon Light and Terra Cycle. Terra Cycle, you can see their bins right out in the library. I think I have a display of Terra Cycle stuff right here. They also collect at everybody's and at Ghost Vape. And if you look at the things that Terra Cycle is accepting, you can see that there are a lot of things that can be recycled that can't go into curbside recycling, but that can be recycled if you have the right collection and sorting processes. So another waste reduction concept is that of reduced packaging. One idea in the European Union in 1994, they introduced an extended producer responsibility program. I don't know what its status is today, but it encouraged the use of low impact and highly recyclable packaging by making manufacturers financially responsible for packaging waste. And I think those market trends are going to be important in the future, and I hope we'll see more of them. Now this is Terra Cycle. Besides the recycling the bins that they have for us to collect, if you can go to their website and you can sign up to get this nifty shipping package here on the left, which is insulated and it's padded and this and that and the other thing. I think you have to pay a small fee to rent this package. But then you place your order and they will fill that container with different bottles or containers, I should say, of whatever products you've ordered. And all of those containers are made out of stainless steel and they're meant to last for a long time, like 20 years. They're not single-use Haagen-Dazs ice cream. That's the Haagen-Dazs ice cream on the bottom right there. It's you're going to use up the ice cream and you're going to put the empty, clean container back in the package and ship it back to Terra Cycle, and then they'll ship you another load of whatever you order. And all of the containers that things come in are meant to last forever or for a really long time. And so now we could argue whether the carbon footprint of the shipping things back and forth is worth it, but I think given the trash problem, it's something to consider. And it's not just a fly-by-night outfit. These are some of the companies that have this aspect available through Terra Cycle. You might have heard of some other companies. Lush does bath bombs that have little or no packaging. Drops with 2 Ps. It has laundry detergent that has little or no packaging. Grove Collaborative sells non-toxic cleaning products that are carbon offset. So all of these incremental changes are ones that we can and should make. And they're all important, although to me they all seem like they're just less bad versions of the same old behaviors. And it makes me feel like we're embracing austerity. It's like we're going to buckle down like we did in World War II, and we're going to have victory gardens, and we're going to save everything and really be on an austerity plan. And we could do that, and we probably should do that anyway for a few years to kind of get things back under control. But there's a more fundamental change that we can make that moves us away from the less bad idea and towards more good. And that doesn't negate abundance, and that's to change the design of things. Managing created garbage is better than dumping things in the landfill, but avoiding the creation of garbage is better yet. And yet, even better is to redesign things so that there's no garbage. You've all heard of cradle to grave, which is designing things to be useful for their whole life cycle, but then after that, they go to the landfill. So a couple of gentlemen, William McDonough and Michael Braungart, have come up with this concept of cradle to cradle, which means that it's a philosophy. It calls for being mindful of what values you want to uphold for the long term, such as healthy air, clean water, healthy soil, healthy planet, healthy people. And keep that in mind when you're manufacturing anything. It kind of goes along with Stephen Covey's 7 habits. One of them was begin with the end in mind, and that's what we haven't done with most of our manufacturing. Back on the bulletin board, there's an article from the Des Moines Register this past Sunday, maybe some of you saw it, about how our wind turbines are reaching the end of their age, their useful life cycle, and they have to be replaced. And what do we do with those old ones? Well, they're going to landfills, but there are not very many landfills that are equipped to handle them, and they're huge. The blades, yep. which is not to say I'm not against wind. Believe me, I'm big on wind, but we just need to think these things through a little bit more.
And another huge problem that we're now facing is recycling solar panels.
Yes, same thing. Yep.
Because they're not only bulky, but they have a lot of rare earth
Yep.
things
Toxins.
that are toxic.
Yep. Yeah, we gotta figure that stuff out. So anyway, cradle to cradle. The idea of that is, when you manufacture anything, whatever it is, you want to use non-toxic ingredients, and you want to build it in such a way that when it's done being whatever it is, a car or whatever, it can be taken apart. So the metal goes to metal, the plastic goes to plastic recycling, the textiles are hopefully all natural and organic and can be composted, and nobody's harmed, and the raw materials just go back where they were and they can be remade into something else. And that's a zero waste situation, and that's going to help us to be living more abundantly without having to live in austerity. And here's an example of that. These two gentlemen that I mentioned designed a chair for a steel case. The chair that they designed is fully adjustable, it's totally comfortable, it came in under budget, it's a hot seller, it's competitively priced, and it's completely recyclable. And they did it by finding toxic-free dyes and textiles, and they fabricated lead-free metals, and they constructed the chair keeping in mind that after the duration of the chair's functional life, they wanted it to be completely recyclable. And you can see some of the side benefits that it got. Since there were no toxins in it, they eliminated protective gear for the line workers. Since there were no toxins in it, they reduced and eliminated EPA paperwork for the manufacturer. They simplified the recycling, and they had happier customers. And, in contrast with a typical office chair, I don't know how many of you have seen dead office chairs lying around in basements and attics and yards and whatever, but I've seen a lot of them. And they typically are made with textiles that are made mostly with plastic, and they're full of toxic dyes and glues, and they're just not a happy situation. So I'm done with most of my slides, but let me give you a call to action. What you can do and what you can't do. Please do not ignore the problem, and please don't become an eco-police person and shame other people who aren't doing as good a job as you think they should be doing on recycling and managing their trash. I would recommend we don't wait for the government to fix this. Don't give up, and we can't offshore the problem. But what we can do is talk about it a lot. Talk with your store managers. Tell them you want your zucchinis breathing. You don't want them wrapped in plastic. Tell them, contact your elected officials, Michael. Email product manufacturers and tell them that you would really like to buy more sustainable products and what are they doing about that. You don't have to be mean, but keep the pressure on. Things are going to have to look different in the future and be different in the future if we're going to get out of this problem. So try to keep an open mind about that. Share what you know. Ask questions every place you go whenever you're buying things. Change your own habits. Support bottle bills. Bottle bills are really good for the environment. Vote for better systems by your spending. Pardon me? What's a bottle bill? Oh, wow. A bottle bill means that there's like a 5-cent deposit on a can or a bottle, a soda can or a water bottle or whatever. Some states have them. I thought Iowa had them.
We do.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Oh, bottle bill. So bottle bills are the laws that say that you can collect 5 cents for every bottle, whatever, and mandate that the groceries have to accept them and stuff like that. A lot of places there are efforts to get rid of the bottle bills. Yeah, but I think they should charge more. So, you can let your elected officials know that too. Get yourself a reusable coffee cup and don't take paper coffee cups, because paper coffee cups are usually lined with plastic and can't be recycled. So up here I have a bunch of stuff, an example of things that can go in curbside recycling, some examples of the things that Terra Cycle has, stuff that you can take to Connelly, plastic bags like at Hy-Vee. They take the vegetable bags and Ziploc bags and all that, things that go to the landfill, and a little bitty thing about compost, not much for compost because I didn't want to bring actual garbage into the library. But compost is usually going to be food waste plus some paper. There's a little bit of paper in there. You can put paper and leaves and stuff like that in it. And as I said, I hope Rebecca will find somebody to talk about composting at the next How To Tuesday. And one other thing I wanted to mention, I had some mystery items that I didn't know if they could be recycled or not. And so here's one. On this carton it says, a recycling symbol, inside it says, check locally. Coated paper carton, not recycled in all communities. Even though, according to some of the published material from Waste Management, they do take these, the gentleman at Waste Management told me we do not take these here. So we've maybe all been putting them in our recycling, and they don't go. Not, as far as I know, not in the programs that they have here now, but we might contact them and see if they did. This one, nope, not that one. This one, okay, here's a late July sea salt bag. And on the back it has a Terra Cycle symbol, and it says, this bag is recyclable through Terra Cycle. Visit www.terracycle.com to learn more. Apparently the deal with this is, you can go to Terra Cycle, you can set up an account for yourself, they will mail it for free, they will mail you a shipping envelope or package of some sort. You collect all your late July and whatever else has a Terra Cycle label on it. When you get a bunch of them, you stick it into the shipping package that they sent you, and you put it in the mail. It's already prepaid, and Late July and the other participating companies will pay the postage on it, and Terra Cycle will make it into backpacks or whatever they make it into. So these are kind of innovative things. Now, I don't know if Terra Cycle is making a profit or not.
There are other things they're in too.
Yeah, but I think it's a great idea, and I hope to see more of it happening in the future. So I had some other mystery items. I don't know whether bubble wrap can be, I don't know where that goes, if it goes.
You can take it and recycle it at Hy-Vee or Walmart with your plastic.
With the plastic bags? Okay, question answered. We'll put it with the plastic bags. Here we go. But in the course of doing the research for this, oh, here's another one. The top is cardboard, and the bottom is plastic without a number on it. So I'm thinking that goes to the landfill. Anyway, so thank you everybody for coming. Thanks, Rebecca. And thanks, Chris Betton.